Continuing on with the series, you want to think about your laundry room and electrical. With your dryer in your laundry room, you want to make sure that you clean your dryer filter out before every time you use it. You let that build up and the heat from the dryer could catch that lint on fire. You also want to make sure that you keep your dryers well ventilated. Don't have it going into some space where it could back up the heat from the dryer. You want to make sure it's, going to be able to stay cool as it goes out, or get cool as it goes out. Try to let your dryers cool down completely after each cycle, or cool off a little bit. Don't sit there and just keep turning it on and on and on, because that's going to build up heat around it. Also, make sure you clean around your dryer regularly. No matter how many times we think we're getting all the lint out, there's going to be some of it fall behind the dryer, beside the dryer, and things like that. So you always want to make sure you clean periodically around your dryers to make sure there's nothing that might be flammable around it. Also, make sure you label and store all the flammable liquids and poisons and things like that away from the dryer. You don't want to take a chance of something that's flammable falling on there and just getting hot and catching on fire itself. And try to keep it all in the correct containers. If you do put it in another type container, make sure it's labeled where everybody knows what it is, and make sure that it stays away from the dryer. And also children. You don't want children getting into the stuff. Electrical, you don't want to overload power points. When you've got a plug-in, make sure you keep the amount of things plugged into it reasonable so it doesn't overheat. If you have damaged plugs or wires, replace them. It's not hard to do. It's simple. Just make sure that you have good plugs on them and wires. You don't want them shorting out and creating sparks and starting a fire. If you use power strips, make sure that you don't overload them. They've got breakers on them, but them breakers can fail. Anytime you're handling electrical equipment, of course, make sure you've got dry hands. Electricity with water is a good conductor. Turn off and unplug any appliances when you don't use them. If it's something you don't use real regular, it's just like your iron. If you iron clothes now, make sure that when you're done with it and you've turned it off, go ahead and unplug it. You don't want to take a chance on the thing shorting out and overheating. When you've got something that you know is faulty as far as electrical equipment, don't use it. You just stand a chance of creating a problem for you that you don't want. Don't put extension cords under carpets or furniture. Walking over extension cords in time, you can break the wiring on it and cause it to get on, shorts. And if you've got it under carpets or under furniture like that, if they do short out, then you're just giving them the fuel to catch on fire. Make sure you've got, good circuit breakers. If you've got one that's throwing regularly, you need to be checking to see what's causing it to throw. That means you've got a short somewhere, or you're overloading it. Or after time, they do weaken some, and it may need replacing. So make sure you check all your electrical wiring switches regularly, especially in older homes. I've got an older home, and it had the screw-in fuses, and the people that used to live in this house, they didn't have the electrical things that we did. So it never worried with them, but as soon as we started putting our things in, we were blowing those fuses regularly, and I had the house changed over to 200 amp breaker boxes where I divided the load up a little better and didn't have to worry about things breaking down. And if you're not qualified to do it, make sure you've got somebody that's trained in that to do the changing. Fire extinguishers, there's so many to choose from, but You want to get one that's a good ABC. Everybody should have at least one in their home. But you can, like I said earlier, try to have one at least on each different level of your home. If you've got a garage or a workshop, make sure you've got one in each one of those places too. Most people don't think about putting one in their garage or workshop, but if something happens and your car catches on fire, you've got an extinguisher there if you're out in your workshop and you're doing something. This acronym is something you can use to remember on how to use a fire extinguisher, and it's called PASS. You pull the pin at the top of the fire extinguisher. The pin releases a locking mechanism and will allow you to discharge the extinguisher. Aim at the base of the fire, not the flames. This is important. In order to put out the fire, you must extinguish the fuel. Squeeze the lever slowly. This will release the extinguishing agent in the extinguisher. If the handle is released, the discharge will stop. Sweep from side to side. Use a sweeping motion. Move the fire extinguisher back and forth until the fire is completely out. Operate the extinguisher from a safe distance, several feet away, and then move towards the fire once it starts to diminish. Be sure to read the instructions on your fire extinguisher. Different extinguishers recommend operating them from different distances. Remember, aim at the base of the fire, not the flames. Using a fire extinguisher, your first defense when a fire starts is learning how to use a fire extinguisher, and you can learn a little more about fire protection at FEMALifesafety.org.